Again, I want to welcome Jarrod Upton and Adam Holt. And Jarrod's going to be kicking off in just a few minutes from Herbers and Company and tell us a little bit about practice management and some best practices around leadership and crisis. So we're really looking forward to that. If you have some questions throughout the program, either for Adam from AssetMap or Jarrod from Herbers, I would encourage you to put the questions in the questions area of the chat, and we will touch on them, maybe halfway through, maybe just toward the end, but we're going to get to some of the audience questions today because really from the last few webinars we've had, that's really where we get some great interaction. So we're really looking forward to your questions. And I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Adam. Again, the call will be muted. We're going to record today. So they're two of our most common questions we get. But again, if you have questions, please type them in the questions area of the chat. And with that, I will kick it over to Adam Holt.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you, everybody. And thank you specifically to Jarrod for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
Oh, happy to. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm looking forward, again, having a really interactive dialogue over the next 25, 35 plus minutes, and to be able to interact with each of you being here today. I know your time is valuable as an audience, especially with everything that's going on, so really appreciate it.
That's great, thank you. Now, for those of you that don't know Jarrod, I'm going to give an opportunity for him to share this, but I want you to understand the genesis too of how this came together. So Jarrod has been in the industry for many years, as he's going to share with us. But I think what's really interesting is the voice and the messaging that he's sharing with a lot of financial advisors these days, talking about how do we lead through change, how do we break through a lot of the new normals that we're going to experience over the foreseeable future. So I want to thank you in advance for this. I think this is going to be great. As always, we do save these presentations, these webinars, and we'll show you how to get that at the end if for any reason you need to drop today. So with that, Jarrod, give us a flavor. How do we get to know you better? What's been your practice? How did you get to where we are today?
Yeah, great question. I mean, as Adam, as you say, I've been in the industry a long time. A little bit about my genesis and what my focus is on why I do this is really stems from a family discussion. My great grandfather came to me several years ago. He said he wanted to talk about being an advisor that he was working with, and this advisor, he really wanted to focus on having a trusting relationship with him. And this advisor gave him good feedback, but he didn't take advantage of that feedback because he felt it was too complex. He really didn't understand, and he didn't really know the advisor well. Now, the short end of the story is why this has impacted me personally is he had worked for a company his entire life, and that company was named Northern Natural Gas. And any of you that are students of history, and if you ever heard of the company named Enron, Northern Natural Gas got acquired by Enron. And he was a good company man. He stood by the company, and he rode them all the way to the bottom. And that really left a mark on me to really change careers, get into the financial advisory space. Started out as an advisor, was a practice partner, sold the practice. Last several years, I was with a very large national RIA called United Capital, was with them for several years. And then a couple years ago, I finally made the leap to join Herbers and Company, where I'm a partner and chief operating officer, and really being able to serve the advisory industry, serve them through helping them to frankly get out of their own way and move forward.
That's great. And so fundamentally, you understand the path of an advisor, having done it. You also understand the empathy of a customer, having experienced not great experience there, and now you're contributing by giving back to the industry. So I know one of the important things that we plan on talking about today, and try to and for those of you in the audience, think about yourself in this journey, because Jarrod has already walked me through some of this. Is really excellent stuff on frameworks to how to approach, especially this crisis in leadership. But I know for many of us, whether you're running a single person financial advisory firm or you're managing a whole team, a lot of this is going to be really valuable. So I really impress upon you, for those in the audience, to think about and put yourself in the shoes. We're going to try to do a little bit of a ham and egg in it to share also our experience from this duality of advice plus leading a company that's consulting. But with that being in mind, please take the opportunity to really put yourself in those shoes today and take the next 30 minutes to do that. So with that, Jarrod, why don't you share this fantastic content with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me actually turn my screen on and go. There we go. All right. Can everybody can see the screen? Thumbs up. Okay,
Thumbs up.
good. All right. Thank you, Adam. So as we get into today, I'm ask you to, one, listen with an open mind, but also more importantly, listen with an open heart, because each of you are dealing with this, as we all are. I mean, we've been thrown through a loop with coronavirus, but there have been other crises who've impacted us before. And those of you that have been in practice for more than a decade, you'll remember the Great Recession back in 08 and 09, and you've lived through some of that. And what we're seeing is how do we actually take those experiences, take the experiences that we're having today, and really slingshot forward. And so for everybody on this call and beyond, we actually have an opportunity to respond. Also, again, encourage you to ask questions. We will take a couple pauses through the course of the presentation and have some dialogue as we move forward. You got some contact information if you want to get a hold of me. So with that, I really want to start and frame this from what is leadership. Let's think about, leadership as a process, and what's that process that we all go through as leaders. Whether you're a leader of a firm, or you're a leader of a client relationship, or you're just a leader of your own life, we all have this different process we go through and really frame for what it takes. When you think about leadership, I mean, right now we look at stress, balance, decision-making, focus, those values and belief, ultimately leading to growth. But to lead, there's three things we need. We need the desire to change, the desire to take on that stress, the desire to move forward, the desire to prosper. Secondly, we need the ability. And every way I've ever spoken with has the ability for leadership in some capacity. Some greater, some learning, some maybe lesser, but we all have certain ability, and that ability, we can grow that ability. And then the third item is the capacity for growth, the capacity to move forward, that momentum and that impetus as we're carrying forward. Now with that, leaders often are distrustful of themselves. That distrust of themselves actually can lead to distrust of others. And the reason why is, as leaders, who's our accountability partner? Who's the one who can help to keep us in check, whether that is a partner or a peer or a family member in your organization, to help you to move forward? To work through that, we've got really those 4 steps. Working through the stress of that, working through the balance of that, what is decision making, what is the focus, understanding the values and beliefs, and then ultimately getting to growth. To dig in on stress just a little bit, we are all completely on the right-hand side right now. Now, you may be hearing from social media that people are so bored, they are, building new things or trying to innovate and create. I have not met one person in our industry who is bored. Most people are, frankly, on the overwhelmed, where they are burning the candle at both ends. When the goal is, I just want to get back to balance. I just want to get to a healthy level of stress. But in reality, that's not where we're at today. And so we're having to work harder, longer, faster. But more importantly, I want to challenge you to think about how you work smarter. Smarter by leveraging your team, leveraging the resources, leveraging those capacities throughout this. And frankly, with great partners like Asset Map. I mean, that could be a tool to help you to use, to engage, and work with your clients. Now, dig a little bit deeper here. We've talked about stress. Let's talk about balance. Balance is 2 things: doing versus thinking. And it's often an inflection point that we can do too much or we can think too much. Now, some of you may be a subscriber to what I'm going to say is sandcastle management. I'm actually going to challenge you to stop being this way for right now. And what sandcastle management is the urge to ideate, the urge to create. And often sandcastle management is we will create just to destroy. And that creation is good, but then we are tearing down the processes. We're tearing down the organizational structure. We're tearing down some of the fundamental base principles that we need to have because we're doing too much. On the flip side is thinking. That's really what's going to lead to procrastination. This is where I'm thinking, I'm deer in the headlights. You can't move forward. Analysis paralysis. And frankly, some of the clients that we're working with right now, they're froze. They can't move forward. They're totally having a shock to the system. They're maybe even starting to turn into panic a little bit because, with this crisis, we didn't have any leading indicator. I mean, right now we're in it about 6-7 weeks now. From when we started to see people start to self-isolate. but trying to get to that balance. You're doing enough, you're thinking enough, and as leaders, I'm going to challenge you probably to think a little bit more, think through strategically where you want to go, why do you want to go there, and then leverage your people on the doing and the implementation. With that, let's talk about decision making. There's 4 steps when you think about decision making, and in knowing that we've talked about doing and thinking is really defining what you want to do, defining where you want to go, defining what you're trying to accomplish, because one risk of leaders is they start trying to solve strategic problems with tactical solutions without taking a step back and doing some business planning, some strategic planning, and really forecasting what are they trying to accomplish. Second one is looking at the obstacles. And frankly, some of the obstacles is the person you look at in the mirror every single day. You're getting in the way of your own success. And so I really, again, engage you to think through the obstacles. Are you the obstacle, or is it a team member? Is it a process? Is it a technology that's holding you back and holding your team back from moving forward? With that, ask for help. And the greatest asset that you all have is, frankly, your human capital asset. This is the team around you, the team that's supporting you, helping you to move forward. That team can help you if you would be willing to ask them. Any of you that follow Gary Vaynerchuk, he says, one, ask your team for help, ask them what you can do to help them, and if they're not successful, take accountability. Take accountability because you're the one that hired them, you're the one that put them in that place. But be willing to ask them for help and how also you can help them. Fourthly is thinking through what the opportunities are. Where are you going to focus on first? Because right now, the market is full of hundreds of different opportunities, hundreds of different things you can do, you can respond to. You don't need to tackle all of them, just figure out the first one. So with that, Adam, when you think about asset maps perspective, what are some key areas that y'all have been working on from decision making and from leading, not only from top down, but also from bottom up within your organization?
See, you had to ask me that question, huh? Well,
that's a hard question.
It's funny because while you were saying that, I was thinking, how might I answer that for both the financial planning practice versus the company of asset map. And in many ways, we've been asked to help other advisors, figure out some of this stuff. I think the immediate questions we're getting from a lot of advisors to kind of split the difference between that is how do I still deliver the quality of advice that I'm used to delivering face to face, where I can touch and hug and shake and doing that now digitally or virtually. And I think the biggest feedback we get back from advisors, and something we're always dealing with, is how do you actually prospect in that environment? Maybe it's okay for where I have a relationship. I can do a client review on the web or on a screen share. How do I actually prospect? And I think that new normal is scaring a lot of people. And when you said specifically a strategic problem and solving it with tactical solutions, I'd love to give it back to you and help us understand, at least in that vein, because it's coming up a lot from our community, is do you see this new endeavor of just connecting with clients remotely, thinking that new normal? Do you think that's a strategic problem, or is that simply a tactic? I just have to find a new way to connect with people.
It's a great question, and I'll answer this from actually 2 different points. One, you asked about prospecting. Right now, I'm actually going to say prospecting we are being really challenged because with clients today, prospects today, they're in crisis. They're often frozen. For those of you that are wanting to market, I would say that in a way to engage with your clients is not prospecting in traditional terms that you think about it, but educate and serve. Serve the community, serve your clients, provide educational resources that they can share throughout them. Those of you as business owners, you may have applied for the PPP or the EIDL. One of the things that we saw, which was great, was some of the clients that we work with were literally doing webinars, doing broadcasts, not just for their clients, but for anybody who had an interest to educate them. And by educating and serving right now, is really reaping what you're sowing. And the reaping is you're planting a field of people that know that you are a quality individual, that you want to be able to support them in a time of need. And then on the flip side, slingshotting back by them remembering and coming to you. And that's where we're seeing some of the greatest growth with the clients we're working with, is really through a serve and educate focus by building in a solution to those in need. Now, with that, you'd ask about, what do we do on the flip side coming out of this? The biggest thing that we're seeing from organizations is to think through their cultural needs. Their cultural needs as, what is their team doing? You heard me talk about, the greatest assets, your human capital asset, but how do you build culture from within? And that culture from within is not a short-term tactical solution. It's not a long-term strategic solution. It is both. There are certain things you can do today from your team's perspective of not just what you say, but how you act. And frankly, based on what we're seeing, is this will redefine in some shape and form the way that we interact as just, service, professional services, engagement for those types of solutions out there. So it's turned from tactical response, how do we set up basic virtual desktop solution, basic remote workforce, to turning into, do we actually want to have real estate in the next 2 years? Do we want to downsize our office and start to have more of a remote offering? Do we want to have a client experience where we can respond not locally, but globally, because this is the new way, the new medium to interact? So Adam, when you think about that, is, right now we can have immediate response, but that response, the longer this goes, it is starting to transition to strategic thinking of how do we respond to not the new normal, just the normal.
Yeah, no, I totally appreciate that. And thanks. It's because you brought up conversations that we certainly have had with other advisors, as well as our past firm, and those that are really running that today, is whether we really are going to have real estate. And it's interesting because I know for us, the remote discussion is very near and dear. I typically share that for the last 10 years, our firm has done 70% of our client meetings online. For 10 years, we were quite comfortable with it, and we designed Asset Map specifically for that modality. And I think it's been an interesting time for us to now share that message. And for those of you who are part of today that are actually doing that, we'd love during this time while we're talking, to even share anecdotally some of those experiences if they're valuable to the greater community in the chat thread, because I'm sure there are people that are interested in that. But very much so, I appreciate, Darren. I want you to continue, because this is a great path. It's forcing me to think about what's the next level once we get through this. Is this really defining the new normal, and how do I build a firm around that? How do I market? How do I talk about brand? How do I earn referrals? How do I also serve the greater community so that I build that reputational value when I can't physically meet people? So
sure.
Those are hopefully all questions that we're all asking each other today.
Good. Well, to carry on what you're saying, Adam, is that, again, building brand, building value, and we've been talking about leadership, I want to talk about how you actually make that deeper. And you heard me mention about culture. Culture being a focus of, we all have an opportunity to build culture. And frankly, the organizations that have the greatest focus on their culture today, those are the firms that are going to win. And I'm going to, highlight what you're seeing right now with the large national banks versus community banks. Large national banks had significant challenges with processing speed on the PPP, on the Paycheck Protection Program, where community banks, they're winning. They're the ones that are actually able to get through. And so we start seeing a societal shift on thinking where those values lie, those values on, hey, I want to go to a national bank that I've got branches everywhere, versus a community bank that actually could get the job done, because the community bank, they're more local, they're able to serve people, they're able to engage. Think about the culture that you have. And really, when you think about culture, it starts with the lens at which you view it. Now, for your organization, the first question is, do you have core values? If you don't, I really challenge you to consider the core values, not just of yourself, but of your entire organization. I want to highlight core values that we use, because the core values that we actually think through for Herbers & Company, that is the lens of which we make or instill our hiring practices for any partner, any individual that works at our organization. Two, they're the core values that we hold true for our external resource partners, firms that we may bring into the fold that we're working with our clients. And then last but not least, core values that when we work with our end client situation. So knowing that we have these, this is the lens at which we look through these, but they're not just talking points. They're actually actionable implementation. We live them, we breathe them, they're a core focus, and we ask that all of our team members know them and have them memorized, because if we know them, then we're leading with action versus just saying things, but then being hypocritical on the backside. So to give you an example of core values, in the event you don't have those, I would recommend not having more than 5, because 5, if you start getting 6, 7, 8, 9, it becomes very challenging for most people to remember them. But if you have between 3 to 5, they're easily committable to memory. So first of all, when you think about a core value example is, and this one is, we build honest partnerships. So we want to describe what it is, but then give us some definition, give some meat behind it for the way that we want our people to act. And this example is our relationship open and honest about needs, wants, desires for the business? Not just our internal business, but the external business for the partners that we work with. To look at moving forward is, we got serving with impact, being intentional with the actions, and then last but not least, seeking fulfillment. And so you can see an example of what our core values are for our organization. Consider what your core values are, because those are the cornerstone to building culture. Because now if you have a challenging or problem employee, look through the lens of core values. Are they meeting the core value definition? If they're not, they may not be the right fit. If they are, but they're in the wrong job, maybe you need to reallocate their job. Maybe you need to help to train them or engage them. Think through that as you're building culture and aligning that for your organization and how you serve your team. Because there's really 3 capacities. 1, serving your clients. 2, serving your team. But then as a leader, it's also serving yourself, not in a negative sense, but you're taking care of yourself. So consider that from a core value definition as a key founding principle, not just from today, but also for the future, and how you can slingshot out of this for your organization and you win on culture. And firms that will win on culture are frankly the firms that you're going to attract talent, you're going to attract clients, and you're going to be able to leverage the resources and team members to help you to ultimately grow. Adam, what are some things that y'all have done in this time of crisis to leverage and build culture in your organization?
You know, that's funny, because I am thinking about it. And I just as a comment, I love the framework for this, because if you're having trouble, and I throw it in the chat, this is a great opportunity for us to reevaluate our core values, right? And how do you figure out what those are? You know, do it in a sentence. We do something. We do it. And doing that, let's say this, I think makes it very valuable, because it's communicable. I can say we serve others. This is fantastic. For us, you know, we've been still hiring all the way through this, which we're really excited about. We've been in a kind of great growth spurt. We're not stopping it. Dumb or not, I don't know. We're going to keep going. And I think that why that's important is because we have to attract talent right now. And we have been really talking about our core values, because people have been asking us, right, what do you stand for? Why do I want to be part of this? Why should I leave another organization to be part of yours? And I think, I know for us, and everyone who's on my team knows this, that we have a family first attitude, which really works well in an environment like this, right? In crisis, which is something's going on in your family, go home. Work doesn't matter, because all else kind of falls apart. You still need the people around you that you love. And so we realize that our work is really just about supporting the people we love. And when those people are taken care of, then we can do our best work. And so we've been really focusing a lot on this. Thankfully, that happens to be an attractive experience to be part of. And I also think the second piece for at least us has been, and I'm really kind of shooting from the hip here, because I hadn't been asked this question specifically. I think today more than ever, people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And whether that's a customer who's joining you and realizes that you have a path and they can be part of that process, believe it or not, customers and clients, they want to contribute to the overall well-being of even their financial advisor and the team that's supporting them. They want to be part of it. They don't want to just be, it's not a transaction. And I don't think it has been for a long time, but I think people are really waking up to the fact that they could potentially actually feel association with the brand of their individual advisor or the firm that they're part of. And I think that holds true also for employees. Employees want to be part of something, and without a mission, without a vision that really connects with people, I think it's an awesome opportunity to remind ourselves what we stand for, and then check in with the people around us, say, hey, do you stand for the same things? Because if you don't, we should have a real honest conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thinking through that now with your team aligned, and by looking at the core values, each of you, Adam, I mean, I'd say for all of our organizations, we have the opportunity actually to grow out of this. To think through on that growth, the organizations that we've worked with, and just thinking about, just jumped too far. Okay, there we go. The organizations we work with, really thinking about what are those areas of growth. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about distracting and areas of opportunity. If you look at each of these as different areas of opportunity that each of your businesses have. So you can see that, yes, we do like diamonds and triangles here. We talked a lot about, again, about the culture side, but also looking at, again, leadership. Leadership is where culture comes from. Your corp finance, that's, again, your financial, your P&L, your financial management, which we'll talk about some things to do that are actionable if you haven't in this time of crisis. Client experience or client service, operational experience or operational structure, management and human capital. We're all being challenged to rethink how we manage and lead people in a virtual environment, because if the concern was, if we can't see them, are they actually working? And in reality, people are. They are working, but now they may be working harder than they've ever worked because they're having to take care of children at home and also be a homeschool teacher and be the cook, and they may also be taking care of aging parents. We're concerned about that. So productivity may change in how we manage that and having flexibility. But then also, again, we talked about the sales and marketing. Sales and marketing to retweak that for now. We've gotten a lot of questions around prospect focus. Again, I go back to serve and educate. Serve and educate your clients, serve and educate your community that you're a part of. Let them know your brand values, your core values as an organization. Those will resonate because people want to do business with folks that identify with them and that they can relate to, and they know they have a common aligned focus on trust. So specifically, to dig into crisis management, we looked at those 8 areas of growth. And Adam, I will have a couple questions here for you in a moment. Think through, what are you actually doing? And I want to give you some tools to consider and some steps to consider. First is assessing where you're at. If you haven't done this, I challenge you to really think where you are today. Where are you at with your people? Are they okay? Are they taken care of? Do they have the tools and resources that they need? Are you serving them through action? Are you calling them on a Sunday or a Saturday, not to ask them what their status is on the latest project, but literally just to say, I wanted to call in to check in with you. Again, we talked about your greatest asset. The second one is process. Think about, what is your process? Do you have any immediate needs on your process, things that are broken? And can you get into what I say is CIP, continuous continuous improvement process, being continuously improving that process, empowering your people to help you to do that. Last but not least is your brand. And this is where I go back to the marketing. And I want to relate this to celebrities. How many of you have seen a meme or seen a celebrity post that they are self-isolated and they're in a 10,000 square foot mansion and it is completely tone deaf? Those celebrities, their brand is being impacted because they cannot relate to what the needs of the many are. The challenges of people who are being furloughed, they are being out of work, they're struggling, and we have seen that from some organizations. Is just think about, what is your brand? If you have marketing, what are you doing? Focusing on serve and educate. Second is doing a SWOT analysis. What are the problems and where are the opportunities? Identifying where your problems, and if you don't know where they are, ask your team. Your team will know. What are the problems we have in the organization? What are the problems we have with the clients? What are the problems we have with each other? And then for each of you, for each of us, there are going to be opportunities that are going to come out of this on how we can win. If there's other firms that are not doing something you're seeing that's a great idea, you can think through that opportunity. But not 5, 1. Even though there may be multiple, just find the one, execute it really well. Don't spread your team already more thin than they are, because they're already being stretched on both sides. Implement your continuity plan. Some of you, if you have not done this already, I encourage you to work with your legal and your compliance professionals to consider, what is your continuity plan, bringing that into action. But also, this is an opportunity to improve your continuity plan or disaster relief plan, knowing that we're all having to work remotely. Stabilize, inform, educate, and encourage. This is for your culture and your team. And then the last two is strategy development, which we talked a little bit about, and then implementation. Implementation, I want to highlight that is that's a step, and those are the building blocks, and literally looking at not your next 5 building blocks, your next one. That next singular building block, do that, and then move to building block 2. To relate that, I'm going to give you a childhood story. And I've got a young daughter at home. I love Legos as a young child. She actually has picked up a love of Legos as well. If you've ever put Legos together, whether you're building a Princess Castle or the Millennium Falcon, you literally have 1 or 2 Legos. You're putting those pieces together and moving forward. You don't move on to step 2 until you complete step 1. That's going to be the truth with implementation. Adam, are there any things that you have done to implement and or change in this crisis management situation with your team, knowing most of us are remote, and how are we responding to that? What are some things that you've done or you've seen from the clients you've worked with?
Yeah. You know what? That's a good question. What have I seen implemented? I think besides, obviously the elephant in the room, this kind of whole Zoom, whether I should be Zoom, join me, GoToMeeting, those big implementations. I think the underlying issue has been how to connect with clients faster and also make sure that your brand's out there. We have seen a lot of advisors really ramp up their social. I think someone indicated that Facebook usage has gone up 3x. And of course, for advisors who've typically been really, I would say, I'm not going to call them lazy, but like lax maybe on the social side for marketing and branding, obviously relying on relationships and golf clubs and social environments and charitable things to get their persona out there. Now all of a sudden that's kind of stuck. So I have seen a lot of implementation around this, but I'll be honest with you, I have not seen a lot of the 5 steps before it, right? I think a lot of people are, playing with trying to, put together the Millennium Falcon without going through the diagrams and what they should be doing. They're not getting resources to educate themselves. So they're really just wasting their time, frankly. And interestingly enough, we did a program with some other tech CEOs where the kind of interesting resounding theme is how I think each advisor on here really needs to consider the fact of where their investments are going in their practice. And when you think about this, and this is, I'm putting the cart before the horse because we don't have time to go through the thinking in these other 5 steps, which is really great. But the conclusion of which was that we've typically invested a good amount in our physical structure that represents our experience brand when a client comes into our office with the furniture and the artwork and the space and the nice parking lot and wood or modern or whatever we're going for. We spend tens of thousands of dollars on that customer experience, and now that's out the door because all I have is this nice little window with my face in it, and hopefully I know how to manage the screen sharing and not have made everybody angry.
Sure.
And so I think the bigger implementation about this, and it's probably less tactical and more strategic to your prior comment, is really reconsidering the customer experience and how we're differentiating, especially as the technology is all starting to look the same. How do you really invest in that? And I think that's going to be the bigger challenge for all of us. For us at AssetMap, it's about awareness, right? People may not even know that we exist. But at the same thing, I think that's true for most advisors is thinking about this. I want to make another comment, if you don't mind. One of the things that we've always been really, I think, thoughtful for our advisors is to remind them to ask their clients to walk through what we call financial fire drills. If you know what I'm talking about, we call it the 6 L's, the common things that typically disrupt a family's financial well-being. And we have a list for that, but I again and again and again, I see advisors that don't actually follow their own advice. They're the shoe cobbler's classic children. They don't have the right shoes, right? We haven't taken ourselves through these fire drills. And I would say that what we're experiencing now is totally foreseeable. I mean, that might sound somewhat a bit crazy, but I know that about a year ago, we had a huge flood in our office. It forced everyone to work from home for 3 weeks. In that case, we decided, okay, everybody should be remote just in case we have this situation again. Kind of looks like this. And I think that running through the disaster plan, as you said, or what are we calling it? You called it a disaster.
Yeah, your continuity plan, the continuity plan.
Which could
Or is
be a
that
whole
your
bunch of things. It could be I'm disabled. I can't even be an advisor because I'm dealing with anxiety over the situation, or I have PTSD, or there's going to be a whole bunch of different fallouts, I think, of what we're currently dealing with. But it really requires us to sit down and actually say, what is the fire drill? What are we going to do so that we're intentional about that? I love that statement.
Great, great. Well, talk about the fire drill to carry on. Just thinking about what's your fire drill? What is the things that you need to be considering? And we call this the hard thing about hard things. We're all in a hard thing right now by being compressed. And if you think about the fire drill you can go through, I love that comment, Adam, is first, focus on your clients. You know, your clients are key and they're in need. They're in need. I would encourage you to be proactive with them. If you're not already doing that, reach out to them. Some things that you can give them is consistency with either email, if you're old school and you still send email newsletters, but especially if you can get it approved from your compliance standpoint, is the power of video. You see Adam and I both here on video. Clients want to see you, and you can actually be more real. You don't have to be wearing a suit. Most of us are working from home. Adam's wearing a t-shirt. That's great. I saw a comment. They love the red antlers behind Adam. It's okay to ask that. Hey, tell me about that. Where did that come from? That's great, because now you actually have a way to be even more personal with your client relationships and letting them get to know you. But being consistent, giving them regular updates. And even if you don't have, hey, we're going to save the world, just giving them, hey, we're monitoring, we're engaging, we're here for you. Second one is, we can't be in denial anymore. We are in crisis. Accepting that fact. You know, it's, you know, people looked at the first week, okay, things are going to get back to normal. Things are not going to go back to normal. This is the new normal. Like I said at the very beginning, it is just the normal now. And I'm already seeing large organizations that are starting to consider and respond. A percentage of their workforce will not ever come back into the office, and rethinking how technology is used, rethinking how you engage your people, how you serve your people, and really leading through crisis as a way to understand we are in crisis. Some specifics you can do with your clients is, you know, clients are distract financial advisors, so you can be distracted. I'd encourage you to balance the working in the business, that's serving clients nonstop, to also working on the business, responding to what you need to do on your business. Some of the things we talked about earlier about culture, engaging your team, and asking for help. Again, with your team, this is a great idea, an opportunity to think through leadership training. There are going to be case studies written about this time in the future, maybe from Harvard Business Review or other high-level organizations, about how leaders responded in this crisis. So think about, you know, what can your team do in engaging and empowering those next-gen employees that you've got in your firm to lead. Ask them for help. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Potentially delaying getting paid and quarterly billing. Those are some steps you can do specifically as far as what you're going to do from partnership distributions. Just some options. Again, accepting you are in crisis. To make sure you're managing things from a financial prudency or financial management standpoint. And then normalcy bias. One of the other things that we also think about, we're going to come back. Markets always rebound. Yes, they have, and yes, we anticipate that they do, but knowing that this time may be a little bit different in how it rebounds, and knowing, you know, with what the workforce of the future looks like. Understanding, you know, financial services as a service are stable, ensuring your clients that we're still here for you, we are here to serve you, we're here to help you, and the other normalcy bias is that we can underestimate the changes. These changes are going to be significant as we move forward. With that, we're all in an environment of thinking about how low we can go. So we call this the limbo problem, is how much can we stretch leadership? How far down can we go stable? I'm not going to read all of these, but I want to ask you, Adam, when you think about the limbo as for your organization, for your team, for even what you're seeing from your clients, what are some things you're hearing about stressing almost to the point of zero, where that stability, but you know, you're stretching as far as you can, but stretching where you don't actually start to have holes in an organization? What are you seeing from your clients, from your organization? You're thinking about the things to help to protect and engage your organization from not running into a negative fulfillment, as opposed to, you know, we're just running more as a stable, as a break even. not from a revenue standpoint, but just from, you know, organizational structure?
That's an interesting question. My gut tells me that what we're seeing in the community is the biggest stressor and known stressor and not being addressed really is being able to communicate with the clientele. In other words, advisors not knowing how or how often or whether they're doing enough around the communication side with their customers, therefore causing potentially either inaction or paralysis or maybe even disconnectedness. And I think, I don't know that I've seen a silver bullet on this one. If I understand the question, I think the advisors who can come up with a way to continuously connect with their clients in a meaningful and not necessarily automated, meaningful way are really going to win the best in this kind of situation. And I honestly think, you know, we used to always joke that that you know, sales or revenue or return solves all problems. I think in today's world, communication solves all problems, right? Because people are willing to put up with a lot of, we'll call them subpar experiences, whether it's performance, costs, or actually with the lack of knowledge or understanding on what to do next, but they'll put up a lot if you at least are there for them. So I tend to think that this is going to be the big motivator for all clients to either stay or do more business or refer existing clients. And that's where I would hope that people are really spending time thinking about intentionality.
Good. I love that you talked about intentionality. But thinking through that, being intentional, let me give you 3 steps of what you can do now. 3 steps is being consistent. Being consistent with your actions, again, as I mentioned, the continuity plan, thinking through that implementation, but also getting in a routine with your employees. One of the things that we do at our organization is every day, literally at 9 o'clock, we're not even getting on, GoToMeeting. We're less formal than that. We just do FaceTime. Everybody's got an Apple product for our organization. We confirm that. But yeah, we get on FaceTime, and, you know, some people are wearing hats. Some people, you can know they may not have showered yet, or they're just got through working out or whatever it is. Been real informal. It's more of just a check-in call, just to make sure that we're connected on a day in, day out basis, just checking in. It's important also to see that in video, because you can see people. You see they didn't sleep well last night, or they're tired, or maybe they're engaged. So seeing that just more as a touch point to connection, but getting into that routine. That way your employees, your team members are doing something. I already talked about routine with clients on whether it's video or through email notification, but the big area is just stay in contact, but stay in contact consistently. If you go dark for a period of time, people are going to wonder, what's wrong? Do you have something? Is there an issue? So actually being more proactive communication is key for what we're seeing right now. Second one is stress testing your financials. Looking at your revenue, forecasting out over the next 6 to 12 quarters, what if you see a falling run rate in your revenue? What's your revenue model structure today? Is it AUM based? Is it retainer based? Is it something else? Looking at that and then comparing what's your P&L to your balance sheet and debt payments. Could you delay a debt payment if you need? Did you get approved for the PPP? How does that impact your revenue for your team? Because your employees, they're concerned. They may not be telling you that they are, but they're concerned. Everybody is, and saying, we're hearing stories about layoffs and furloughs. Financial advisors, and those of you that experienced in 08 and 09, we saw it then. We haven't seen it yet in those industries, but we saw it then. So your employees are looking for that stability right now. Consistency will drive that, but also making sure you're being prudent financially. What is your free cash flow? What are your credit lines you can access to? The last item is, again, recreate your strategic plan. This is opportunity to look at the strategic plan you have, but it may need to be recreated. It may need to be reimagined based on what was tactical, but now is strategic as we're looking at moving forward. So consider that and think through those next steps. Adam, what have you seen, and what are some great tips that you've seen from just consistency for some of the clients you've worked with to be able to maintain contact with their employees, their teams, and as well as their end clients?
Yeah, sure. Gosh, there's lots of tech tools out there that are enabling this. I love the FaceTime idea. We hold a Monday morning stand-up for everybody. It's pretty devolved now into a roasting fest and making fun of people's backgrounds and their hats. But that's actually just as valuable, I think, as talking about strategy and tactics, because it really connects people in the time they need it. And I would really recommend. We have seen a spike in the number of, we'll call them team level meetings. Happy hours has been a big thing recently. Trivia nights.
Yeah.
We've seen actual card games go online. There's now free tools out there. You can play cards online and with a single digital deck. Connecting with people is just, gosh, so important today, and I think that's been important for us. On the financial side, we did go through all of this survey, and I know there are some organizations that are in tough situations, having to make tough choices. But I think it's really critical that you mentioned about talking to your employees and really carrying the mantle if you're in leadership to talk about what's, how do you make sure that you give them a path that gives them confidence, because remember, they're supporting an entire family too often and their hopes and dreams. And they when they're stable and they're secure and they have a vision, I would even impress upon everybody to talk to their current teams, whether it's a singular paraplanner or assistant, or whether it's your partners, and say, listen, here's what we need to do in order to achieve X. If we don't do this, we're going to have those conversations. And here's specifically how you can help us. By the way, how else do you think we should approach this problem? And let people own ultimately their own future so that they can feel entrepreneurial and making sure that your business has the success. If it's we need to go and engage X new clients this year, or we need to talk about this amount of AUM, or we need to place and fix this many with solutions, I think bringing people into the problem scrum and talking about how we're going to fix it together really allows them to take ownership over the financial outcome, which clearly is going to affect all of us. So I think that's really critical to do.
Yeah, great. When you said bring them in together, I think of a book written by Simon Sinek, and he says it best. He says, together is better. I mean, we've heard that time and time again coming out of this. It's, being together is better. We're going to pull through this together. Our teams are going to pull through this together. I challenge you to do not limit yourself. In the firms that I know that we worked with back in 08 and 09, those that worked together cohesively as an organization actually became some of the fastest growing organizations in the industry. And so a lot of the big names that you see out there, because they came together versus I'm going to take the weight of the world on my shoulders. I'm not going to ask for help. I'm going to try to do everything myself. I'm going to get burned out and I can't move forward. And I want to open it up for questions from the audience. This has been absolutely fantastic, Adam. Really appreciate that. But the speed of change will equal your speed of growth. And I want to leave you with a book. If any of you ever read the pop management book, Who Moved My Cheese? Who Moved My Cheese is about 4 little characters. Adam, you're laughing yourself, so you probably read that book, or it's a funny title, but it's about 4 characters, 2 of which, him and Hall, they hang out. They don't really want to move and make change. The other 2 sniff and scurry. They're moving quickly. They're sniffing out. They're scurrying to new opportunities. The cheese has moved. Our cheese, which is the way things were, will have moved. I don't know how far, but it will have moved. Change is the one absolute in life. Change is inevitable. So you can either embrace change or you can deny change, but change is still going to happen. So with that, if any of you want to contact us, this is contact information, but I'd love to hear any questions from the audience. Adam, any questions that you have? And just really, really appreciate the dialogue. This has been fantastic.
No, absolutely. And thank you, Jarrod, because the reality is we never know how these are going to play out. And for those of you that are participating today, and hopefully you found some value here, our bigger mission is also to serve and to give relevant content and to share what we know and hopefully make this planet a better place. We happen to be focusing on financial services because clearly a lot of people need help. But I think, Jarrod, you've given a masterclass on how to think about strategically and tactically how to run a business. I know for myself, I've already written down 2 pages worth of notes that I'm going to now go back. I hope if you have participated and you're thinking about this stuff, that you do take the time during this period of time to write down 1, 2, or 3 things that you can go and explore and really invest in yourself and not just lose this, because typically what's going to happen, we're going to go right back to our scramble of our daily routine, and we haven't written something down, but to take some action and really focus on that. If we do anything else, hopefully we help you look back and say, gosh, it was because of that conversation that Jarrod shared with me that I made this change. And we'd love to hear that too. So with that, why don't we, Allison, you've been monitoring the questions. Are there any questions you think might be relevant for either of us as we get towards the last 10 minutes of our program today?
We actually, this time we seem to have a lot more comments than questions, but comments are good too. So you guys had such good dialogue and answered each other's questions so nicely that I think people just had things to add, which is fine too. So I'll share some of those. And in the meantime, if anybody else has any specific questions for either Jarrod or Adam, please go ahead and type them in the question box. But from our Asset Map friend, Don, he mentioned that, after hearing some of the conversation between you guys, he thinks it's very important to go ahead and use your advisor intelligence, which Adam talks about quite a bit. And the direction of financial advice should really be now and in real time, rather than saying, hey, I'll get back to you in a couple of weeks with a report you might not understand. So being able to really connect with people quickly is important, and a comment that Don went ahead and wrote in.
That's great.
Any thoughts on that?
Great.
The comment I'd have, and Don is great because I appreciate that. I hope he's still on. He's done a great job sharing his experiences with everybody. I thought about it. I went back to my notes for a second, and I had a question for you, which was, you asked me a question about what am I seeing advisors or practices really struggle with and deal with. Let me throw that back to you, because you're dealing with multiple firms, different size advisors, independent, captive, doing all kinds of different things. What are you finding is the biggest pain point, and then how are they going about attacking it, right? Is there any guidance you might offer us?
Yeah, that's a great question. What we're seeing right now is actually advisors are speeding up. It's almost through inertia. And it's like I've got to respond to clients, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and that speeding up, and going back to that slide, that doing versus thinking. And so I'm seeing a lot of advisors actually spending less time, and you heard me say at the very beginning, strategic problems with tactical solutions. It's like I'm solving everything on tactics. It's literally the here and now, today, and that inertia then, as it creates momentum, is now it becomes a force that it becomes very hard to stop, because or to slow down, and often it's not always externally, it's internally. It's internally where I'm not taking time to slow down to focus on what's important. To give you a tool to use, if any of you have ever heard of the Eisenhower decision matrix, it's 4 boxes. It's what is important and not important, what is urgent and what is not urgent. If you think about the barrage of emails you get, not from clients, but just emails, do you need to respond to all of them right now? Some people say, I need to answer every single email. There's a lot of emails that you don't necessarily need to respond to. They are urgent, but they're not important. And so we deal with those things every single day. You think about just those little things, or death by 1,000 cuts, I often think of. You use a lot of word pictures here, but where I'm seeing advisors actually put things off are things that are important but not urgent, like sleep, like saying thank you, like literally just slowing down enough, and use the cliche term, stop and smell the roses. Because by taking a step back and taking a breath, allows for your mind to decompress and your mind to process and to think. So really, I challenge you, one, to think through that, as those of you listening on the audience, but that's really the biggest challenge I'm seeing. And then on the flip side, for those advisors that have inertia and momentum, now they're stressing and wearing their teams out, because their teams are, I've got all these ideas, they're new ideas every single day, as opposed to being that calm through the storm. So if you are subscribing to that mentality and speeding up, take a day off, take a half a day off, don't work on the weekend, just give yourself time to breathe and go back and reflect and look at what's important right now. How do I serve my clients? How do I serve my team? How do I take care and serve myself?
Gosh, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because not only have I not really taken any time off, but this is something that I also want to impart to everybody. So I really appreciate that. Everyone I've talked to recently, I've asked them, I think we've all been pretty good about being empathetic, right? We tend to say, how are your family? Are you healthy? What are you doing with? We can connect about, what we're all dealing with together. It's actually an interesting community problem. but almost everybody to a T says that they're more productive, they're working harder, and they're scrambling like more than ever. Maybe it's because we're not commuting, we don't have a moment where we can stop at Starbucks and break our day for 5 minutes, or if we're traveling, we're not on an airplane sitting there reading a book that we might want to read. For whatever reason, we're all working hard. And I was reminded actually by my family that that we're not the only ones that are working like crazy, right? Our kids are home in a totally different environment.
Yep.
You know, our partners, our spouses are managing in whole different ways. And this doesn't just revolve around us. Our customers are sitting home and they're reading stuff that maybe they shouldn't be reading. They're getting into a state. We have to find time to disconnect and get back to the balance that you talked about early on in this presentation. And to remind ourselves to give other people permission to take care of themselves, whether it's our family, our team, and say, it's time to take a PTO, you're going too hard. And even if you just sit at home and watch Netflix, or you go for a walk in the woods, you got to figure out a way to do it. Otherwise, we run the real risk of running another fire drill, which is true burnout or potential disability, because we just can't keep it up. So I think that's really, really important. I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
Yeah, to chime in on that, it's, you know, with your people, and Adam mentioned too, you don't want to have them so broken where when we do come back that they're depressed or they're addicted and they can't actually perform, they're on disability or whatever. On the flip side is that giving them permission, leading from top. And I actually talked to the great leader who had there's a very large organization. There was an individual presenting to the senior leadership team, and there was a dog that barked in the background. And the individual presenting just said, "Hey, I'm sorry, I apologize." The individual that was the CEO said, "I'm just going to stop right there. We all need to give ourselves permission to say this is okay, and you don't need to apologize. We're in the new normal." And for those of you that are doing meetings, we can literally do back-to-back meetings. I mean, I'm guilty of that as well. But the art of the 20-minute meeting or the art of the 50-minute meeting, because we still need to go eat, go take a bio break, go just take care of some basic functions in our lives, and as opposed to just sitting in front of a computer trying just to respond, just to serve. And we're being stressed on all sides.
That's very true. Well said. And I think it's reminiscent to our video game days, except, you know, it's not quite maybe as fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Remember that if you're an X generation, you grew up in this environment. You just sat behind a computer and played video games all day. Or maybe you didn't. But anyway, listen, I threw up on the screen to everybody where we're going to put and host this program. If you think this was valuable and you want to listen to it again, or you want to share it with somebody who you value and would appreciate it, please share. We have been putting up a good number of our current webinars up here at assetmap.com/webinars. So Jarrod's program is going to be up here, not too distant future, as well as all our archives. We've got over 15 hours now up here on the web for you to just bore yourself all day long and learn something. So we hope that you take advantage of this. With this, I want to close this up and thank Jarrod Upton for a fantastic program today. I really appreciate your partnership. And for all of those of you that took your time to be with us, we really honor and respect your time. So with that, we wish you all well and your families a safe and prosperous spring so far. And we look forward to catching up with you soon. Thank you, Jarrod. I appreciate your time.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate your time.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you. Have a great day, guys.